Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Five for Breakfast. We're now in our 17th episode of 2024. But before we kick off, I'd like to thank Wesco, the platinum sponsor of Five for Breakfast. In Washington, the House Energy and Commerce Committee announced that they'll be holding two hearings in May related to broadband. The first will be an FCC oversight hearing with all five commissioners on May 7th, and the second will be an oversight hearing with NTIA Administrator Alan Davidson on May 15th. We expect the latter hearing to be focused on the BEAD program. It's also very sad to report that the Affordable Connectivity Program, ACP, ends next week, terminating the government's most successful broadband adoption program for 23 million Americans before the first dollar BEAD has been deployed. The program is gone. Kind of our government at work for us. But despite many bipartisan efforts, Congress has not allocated additional funding. So I'm not sure what we're going to do, but we're still not giving up. We're going to have to figure some way to help with adoption. The Fiber Broadband Association's next regional Fiber Connect workshop will be held in beautiful Deer Valley, Park City, Utah on Tuesday, June 4th. Deer Valley is such an incredible place in June, and the event is going to be fantastic. You guys were at Little Rock last week. It was absolutely amazing, and Deer Valley is going to be just as good, if not better. So look forward to seeing you guys all in Deer Valley. And after Deer Valley, we'll be in Des Moines in September, Calgary in October, Albuquerque in November, and of course, our big Fiber Connect 2024 conference will be in Nashville, July 28th to 31. Everybody will be there, and I'm sure you guys will be there as well. That brings us to today's Five for Breakfast session. Our guest is Arnab Ghoshal, the Vice President of Connectivity and Innovation with Alabama Power, who's going to be discussing electric utilities working together to bridge the digital divide. But before I formally introduce today's guest, I'd like to introduce David Norris from our team, who's going to walk us through some housekeeping items.
Thank you very much, Gary, and good morning to everyone who's joined us today. We appreciate it. Before I go over the logistics, we'd just once again like to thank our platinum sponsor, Fiber for Breakfast, Wesco. Now, if everyone would please keep in mind, all participants are in listen-only mode today. To ask a question, please type it into the question box located within the control panel on the side of your screen. We will have a Q&A session with our panelists at the end of today's session. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on FBA's website within 24 to 48 hours. You can find the drop-down or rather you can find the recording rather in the events tab under the Fiber for Breakfast drop-down option. At the conclusion of the presentation, you'll be prompted to complete a brief feedback survey. Please take a moment to do so. We appreciate your input. And with that, I will pass things back over to Gary to once again introduce our panelists and get things started. Gary?
Thanks, David. Good morning. I'm Gary Bolton, the President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Last week in Fiber for Breakfast, we had a very special session in recognition of National Linemen's Appreciation Day, which was last week on April 18th. Our guests were Todd Butcher, the Vice President of Power Distribution for S&N Communications, and Joe Phillips, the Director of Engineering and Design Services for S&N Communications, who discussed fiber and electric, a marriage made in safety. So if you missed that, you can go check the replay. Today on Five for Breakfast, our guest is Arnab Ghoshal, the Vice President of Connectivity and Innovation with Alabama Power, is going to be discussing electric utilities working together to bridge the digital divide. Arnab serves as Vice President of Grid Transformation and Connectivity, and is responsible for overseeing his team's use of data analytics technology and connectivity to improve the reliability and resiliency of the grid. His team collaborates on economic development initiatives and community impact through connectivity deployments. Throughout Arnab's 18 years with Alabama Power, he's served in several different roles within the power delivery organization, including substation maintenance engineer, Alabama Control Center operator, protection and control engineer, substation construction scheduler, assistant to power delivery, SVP, and connectivity and innovation manager. And he also serves as Vice President and COO of Southern Telecom. He serves on the boards of directors at American Red Cross, Embrace Alabama Kids, and Alabama Service Organization. He's selected as Aspen Ideas Scholar, the Birmingham Business Journal's Top 40 Under 40, the fortnightly 40 Under 40, and a participant in the Young Americans Leadership Program at Harvard Business School. Arnab earned his BS in Electrical Engineering from Alabama, as well as MBA from UAB. So with all that, welcome Arnab. And for our audience, please type in your questions as we go, and we'll work them in the Q&A at the end. So with that, let's kick things off.
Awesome. Gary, thanks for having me today, and I get to represent a lot of teams and people at Alabama Power that make all of this happen. So I'm just lucky to be able to represent them and tell our story of the impact of connectivity and fiber, both from how it's impacted the electric grid and how we think about our customers every day of serving reliable electricity, resiliency, and keeping the lights on, but then what else can we do with it from a broadband perspective? So if y'all are good, I'll dive in here on the presentation. We'll look out for questions, and then we'll go from there. So if you hit the next slide, this really shows sort of our thesis here when you think about the fiber deployment. I mentioned it. We first start with the reliability and security of the grid. How can we make that stronger and better for our customers, and how do we do that through our fiber deployments? And then at the same time, how can we get more efficient? When you pair data, fiber, and technology together, you start getting more impactful grid solutions that can keep the lights on and keep more customers on, but it can also give us insights into the electric grid of where the actual fault might be occurring at a pinpoint location. So we can get more efficient as we collect this data, understand more of what's going on out there on the system, and then can respond quicker. And then we think about customer makeup here when we deploy our fiber. We look at, hey, are there hospitals there? What other community anchor institutions are there? And that comes into where our deployments might be prioritized. And then you mentioned it, Gary, on the economic development side. Where else can we impact the communities that we serve? Obviously, lights on, keeping the power going is number one for us, but what else can we do from a broadband perspective to help our customers and the state of Alabama? So that's sort of overarching, how we think of this when we think about our fiber deployment strategy there. The next slide here shows what we've done over just the last, 5 or 6 years. When you think about our footprint, you can see there the bottom 2/3 of the state is Alabama Power's coverage area. Over 800 miles of fiber distribution. Those are those boxes that you see on the screen. So you can see we're in very rural parts of our state, which we're very proud of. We serve all. So urban, rural, we're located there with over 800 miles of fiber distribution and over 875 miles of long haul fiber. So those are the solid lines there. Green is good. Those are the routes that we've completed. On the long haul side, probably no surprise, we connect major load center to major load center, follows, a lot of our big substations, generating facilities, all those kind of things where we got to get insights, monitoring, being able to transport data there. So this thing is going to continue to go. This just shows our long haul underground fiber and our fiber distribution. It doesn't show our OPGW, which is our overhead fiber on our transmission system. If you overlay that, this thing becomes even more impressive of what the teams have done there. So hopefully this gives good context of where we're going. Everywhere we go here impacts the grid in a positive type of way. The next slide will show y'all a little bit about what that means, from the core electric lights on perspective of what we've done. I mean, over 138 substations connected. So now we have more insights into monitoring. We can get to more what we call condition-based maintenance, where we can send maintenance when needed and not cycle-based in a lot of these cases, because we're getting more data, we're getting more health of our equipment in real time. So that's been very, very impactful. We've connected over 1,000 devices on our distribution system. So when you think about tree falling in a line, something has to occur, right, to isolate that fault. And then, hey, how do you switch around that issue? Well, fiber allows those devices to talk in real time and literally at the speed of light to be able to reconfigure the grid in milliseconds. So that improves reliability there. And then you can see all the other kind of things we've been able to connect to. We have a, at Southern Company, we have a private LTE network y'all know this more, the wired supports the wireless side of the house. So no different for us of getting to our LTE and AMI towers there. So the next slide gives you a little bit of flavor of what the deployment looks like. On the left, what you got a picture there is how we're putting fiber on our long haul transmission right of ways underground there. So we're going on our rights of way on the edge, 5 feet from the edge of the right of way, and installing that. We also put up OPGW. So similarly, we're still putting fiber on the top position of the transmission system as well, where it makes sense. And on the right is our fiber distribution program. We're putting fiber in the communication space there in the red box. And what you see in the yellow box on the right are, I mentioned those devices that we connect to. That's one of our recloser devices on the system. So fiber will connect to that to help support that communication network there. So, the first part of this presentation really wanted to highlight, hey, from a core perspective, the need only grows of needing data and using technology to support the electric grid. That's only going to continue to occur. So having a good fiber backbone is critical from an electric utility standpoint. As we deploy and we have available fiber outside of the core and electric purposes, our marketing team is constantly thinking about what else can we do. So the next part of this program and presentation describes that. But a lot of this, you got to give a lot of credit to the state of Alabama and the legislation that's been passed, both on legislation, and we'll talk about funding. But legislation really sets the table here for what else can you do, right? And one of the biggest pieces of legislation for the electric utility as us and the electric cooperative in the states was this middle one on the Broadband Using Electric Easement Accessibility Act. This was about, I think, 4 or 5 years ago this was passed, Gary. So historically, as electric utility, our easements are for electric purposes, right? It makes complete sense. This legislation also allowed our easements to support broadband activities. So big deal for us. It enabled a lot of partnerships that I'll mention here that our teams have been able to go get, and people willingness to say, okay, you got this infrastructure, what else can we do with it? So that kind of legislation, super impactful. The two on the right are more about funding avenues. The state of Alabama has done a great job of putting funding available for the last mile, the middle mile, really being able to support broadband throughout the state. And the one on the right, SB 215, has just set up an authority to really look at how the funding in Alabama is strategically deployed there. So when you get all three of these things together, you really lay a really good foundation of being able to maximize your broadband strategy. So if you hit the next slide, David, this really highlights for us when we think about partnership, right? We're deploying long haul, we're deploying fiber distribution. We're not an internet company, and nor are we pretending to be, but we do know we have infrastructure that can enable that. And so then that allows us to get with internet companies that you see there on the right, whether that's Freedom Fiber, where we've done a partnership in Fayette, Alabama, where we have a fiber to distribution project there for a grid, but we have available fiber. So we partnered with Tom Bigby and Freedom Fiber to get fiber to the home in Fayette, rural Alabama. So that's a great way, a great partnership of using our infrastructure in the right way, getting broadband to folks that might not otherwise have it. We're really proud of that. We continue with the partnerships here. When you think about the Yellowhammer partnership, that's in the Black Belt. When you think about Point Broadband and you think about Auburn, you think about C Spire, you think about Jasper, Alabama, Dragonfly. We just did a partnership in Bruton and Monroeville. So we love being able to partner where we have availability and it makes sense. We can help our communities be able to get fiber to the home internet, and it really strengthens that community and helps our state at the end. Okay, so that's a big deal for us, and really big shout out to our partners here, where obviously we couldn't do it without them, and we want to continue to be able to enable this here. So that's sort of the last mile piece. We're always open and looking for what is that next partnership where we have infrastructure and it lines up. We like to do that. The next slide here really talks about sort of the middle mile network, okay, and what the state has been able to do. We talked about legislation, but now let's talk about funding. You know, the state, you know, a couple of years ago put out a grant to really stand up Alabama's first interstate fiber network. You know, the I-20, I-65 of fiber. When you look at all of the partners there on the screen, hold on a minute. Yep. When you look at all the partners on the screen there, you see a lot of electric cooperatives, okay? And what the electric cooperatives did, led by Power South, is they formed a consortium called the Alabama Fiber Network, okay? And they said, hey, we want to help stand up the first Alabama interstate system of fiber. And they put in for this grant, and they were winner to do it. We are just a part of this partnership. We're providing fiber to enable it, since we have existing available fiber. You can see there over 1,200 miles of Alabama Power fiber will be part of this network. Okay, so that allows a dollar to go further. You don't have to build greenfield. We have fiber available. So from a state perspective, we're able to get to more counties quicker. And then when you put it all together, the cooperatives and Alabama Power and all the people you see here, you get a really powerful fiber network. So the interstate system is well underway. I mean, at the end, this thing will total over 3,000 miles and be in every county in Alabama. And we hope that the goal here is to have lower cost and availability for transport and long haul fiber throughout the state that's accessible for the last mile providers there. When you think about the next slide, so now that you've built the chassis and you've built the interstate system, how do you get to the community anchor institutions? So the state did a great job again of going, okay, let's make funding opportunity available. A lot of people put in for this, won money out of this to serve community anchor institutions. Again, our fiber, we're not a direct applicant, but our fiber will enable over 438 community anchor institutions to possibly get served fiber to the premise through the Alabama Fiber Network, which are the cooperatives that I mentioned and showed on the screen before. So now this thing is really becoming powerful when you're getting to hospitals, you're getting to schools, you're getting to other critical libraries, you know, fire departments, those kind of things in our communities. And now you're really changing the dynamic for the community and those CIIs there. So Gary, I think that was, let me see, is that my last slide? I believe it is. So hopefully that gives y'all a flavor of, okay, how we're approaching this, and, you know, how we are really looking at infrastructure to be able to do a couple of different things and hopefully make a difference on a variety of things, whether that's the grid, our communities, economic development, the state, all of the above. We want to be able to really be able to impact the state of Alabama in a positive way. So I'll pause.
Well, it's great stuff, Arnett. And let's just start with, you know, Alabama. I mean, Alabama, just the BEAD alone is $1.4 billion, right? That's, I mean, so they're one of the biggest recipients, you know, outside of Texas. And there's lots of other, you know, ARPA and capital projects and other grants and so forth. So there's tons and tons of broadband money. And so really what Alabama Power, you're raising your hand saying you guys are open for business, right? That you guys are ready and willing to lease dark fiber to anybody wanting to deploy broadband throughout Alabama. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, where Gary, we have available infrastructure and the partnership aligns with, you know, our principles, absolutely. We want to be able to enable that. And then when you think about, you mentioned BEAD, you know, lot of money coming to the state of Alabama. We're trying to think through how can we be a partner there to enable broadband further into rural Alabama. So we absolutely want to be a partner, and where it makes sense, we want to be able to provide infrastructure to help support that. Absolutely.
And, some questions that come in, but you guys, Alabama Power is not in the retail broadband business and has no plans anytime in the future to be in the retail broadband business. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct.
And so anybody that wants to be in the retail, any ISPs or anybody that's coming into Alabama, how should they approach you when they're putting together their BEAD applications? What should they be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where, Gary, we'd love to be able to sit down with folks and just say, what is your plans? What are you trying to do? Where are you trying to go? And then we can look and see, okay, where does that overlap, where we have availability and it lines up with, our program, and okay, how can you partner to be able to enable this for wherever that location is in Alabama? So yeah, we would love to have any type of conversation there in our service territory for sure.
Can you talk a little bit, you're COO of your telecom business. Can you explain what that means and what that business is?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I have two jobs. So I spoke a lot about the Alabama Power piece and my role there. I also get the opportunity to work at Southern Telecom, which is all part of the same umbrella of Southern Company. But really just looking at this broader, right? So we have Mississippi Power, we have Georgia Power. So I showed y'all the map today that just showed, the Alabama map, but we have infrastructure in Mississippi, we have infrastructure in Georgia. So when I get to wear my Southern Telecom hat, I get to look at it at a broader lens of, okay, how can we get from Gulfport to Atlanta, right? And how can we really look at this network a little bit more regionally is the goal there. So I say all that to say also, as you think about partnership, that's open there as well, of being able to be creative where it lines up. I can tell you Mississippi and Georgia are also deploying long haul fiber for grid purposes, but hey, there's availability there to also interconnect. So that continues to be very positive, and it becomes more powerful when you think about it at a bigger scale.
So when people think about, when they talk to you, they should think broader than Alabama. They should think of the whole Southern Company footprint of you can help them with dark fiber across that whole footprint.
Yeah, you can start with me, and then I'll get to the people that really know what's going on, Gary.
All right. Well, so let me ask you about, so what fiber is up for grabs to start? I mean, so you certainly use a lot of fiber for your grid modernization and so forth, but so you talked about 875 miles of long haul fiber. You had 800 plus of fiber to the distribution. And then you also kind of mentioned overhead fiber. So can you explain kind of, again, a little bit of what fiber you have and what would be available to lease?
Yeah, I think there you hit it. You got the three portfolios. Each one's going to have a different capacity component to it. Each one's going to be different based on when it was built. If it's a legacy network, you're going to have less fiber because the fiber technology, as y'all know, has advanced very tremendously, right? So your counts that you built 20 years ago, you're going to have less fibers on that infrastructure. But I would say overall, a long haul fiber program has good capacity to it. It's a newer program. So with that in mind, you're just going to have more opportunity. You're going to have some conduits. You'll have more availability to do maybe both the grid and other type of things without one impacting the other. Okay. When you think about OPGW, that is where it's more legacy. You're limited because you're at the top of the line. From a design and weight standpoint, you're limited on the amount of fiber you're able to put up. So that becomes a little bit deeper of a dive when we get asked there. Okay, what exact section are you talking about? And then what are we using for core? And then what does that allow or not allow for external or economic development opportunities? And then on fiber distribution, similarly, you're only able to put up one fiber. So again, we have to look at what area are you talking about? How much are we using for grid? and what is left over there. So really, when you look at it left to right, OPGW probably we got to look at really closely. Fiber distribution, might be a little bit more opportunities, and then on the long haul side, with it being newer, there might be more there. So, but always, Gary, for us, it's where, because we gotta, like anything, you gotta look into the details from a capacity standpoint.
Now, where would you connect if you're not an ISP? Would it be at your fiber distribution terminals, or would you how would they know what points of presence you have and what's available?
Yes. So Gary, there, I mean, when we showed the map of the solid lines, we're also putting up co-location facilities for us, for our servers, for the Southern Company network itself. But there's available access points within the co-location facility, so that's usually where we would steer first. Well, our construction team also does a great job of putting up handholds along our routes, so those are access points as well. So throughout it, again, we need to know exactly where and what, but there's available access points built into our network.
Okay, and then so you talked about you got the Alabama Power footprint, you have the Southern Company footprint, and then but you also mentioned the Alabama fiber network. So you guys are almost half of that network, but a little over half is your relationships with all the different co-ops and so forth. So if someone do they engage with Alabama fiber network, they start with you and you say, okay, here's how you get from here to there? Or?
Yeah, they would engage with the Alabama fiber network there, led by Power South, and we're half the network just from an infrastructure standpoint, Gary. They're running all the optronics, the actual services. They're doing the really those bigger lifts over there. We're a fiber partner with them. So yeah, but a big big, like you said, 1,200 plus miles. I think with the other 800, we're close to 2,000 miles of that network there. But they run it, they operate it. So definitely, as you think about capabilities and service offerings, Alabama Fiber Network is the right contact there. And I'll put a plug maybe one day. I think that they'd be a great guest too, Gary, to have on here.
Hey, so I got a lot of questions about using your fiber optics for grid modernization. And do you think fiber optics to the meter will become a reality? And with fiber to meter, what microgrid improvements, enablements do you anticipate?
Yeah, so I mentioned the distribution devices and showed that picture there. So that's going to continue to give positive impacts on a reliability standpoint. So we really like that program. When you think about the meter, fiber to the meter on our bigger customers can make sense. When you think about commercial and industrial, where it lines up and needing more granular data collected by the meter, so we can have more insights into what's going on for the customer. And a lot of time the customer wants to know at a granular level their electric, patterns and those kind of things. So from a meter perspective, it makes sense in certain situations. On the residential level, we're not there yet okay, how would that look like and what's practical? But on the commercial industrial side, we're starting to see, the backhaul and the amount of data the meter is able to collect is only growing, which allows us to serve our customers better. So that's starting to happen, Gary, very slowly.
Well, Arnab, I mean, there's a ton of questions here, so hopefully you can follow with these. But a lot of people are asking how they can obtain Southern Company co-location facilities and who they can contact about your bridge projects and what. Let me just hit this one really quick. So when you talk about dark fiber, are you talking about dark fiber or wavelengths or carrier Ethernet or?
Dark fiber. No waves for us.
And there was questions about, do you have any problem with permitting and pole attachments? I assume that you use all your own poles for everything. And
that's right. And Gary, we follow, for us as we deploy, we follow FCC guidance. As a IOU, that's who we look to on anything there. So yeah, we would follow the same processes. Obviously, we know them very well as an electric utility of what that is.
Well, Arnab, we really appreciate, I mean, it's what Alabama Power is doing is really awesome for the state of Alabama and the region, the Southern Company footprint. So we really appreciate you sharing what you guys are doing and the opportunity for anybody wanting to go after that $1.4 billion of Alabama BEAD money to get, to at least start fiber and work with you guys. So thanks everyone for joining us. We're going to get together next Wednesday. We're going to be talking to Jill Springer, the Senior Policy Advisor for Permitting Chief Environmental Review and Permitting Office for the Office of Internet Connectivity Growth with NTIA. So it's a lot to say. We're going to be talking about the maximizing the benefits of NTIA's new permitting tools. So if you're interested in permitting, you're not going to want to miss that. We'll see you guys next Wednesday. Arnab, great session. Thanks. We'll see you guys soon.
See y'all.